Hello everybody and welcome to Broadland's Cabinet on 16th of July. Just to remind everybody that this is a live meeting that is going out on YouTube to 2 people, do you think? 3 at a push? Okay, so we'll get straight into it. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, any apologies?
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Holland and Councillor Beadle will be delayed.
Yes, I'm aware of that one. Thank you. Okay, so minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 21st of May. Has everybody read them and agree they are accurate? Okay, that's agreed. Public speaking, do we have any public speaking?
There's no public speaking, Chairman.
Shame. Okay, so first up is overview and scrutiny committee. Do you wish to speak now or later on?
If it works. I can summarise now. I don't believe there weren't any below the line matters, were there? So I can speak now. I mean, I'll say everything was passed unanimously, but not without discussion. There was, I'll go through the little notes that I'd made on the agenda. On item number 8, the finance report, there were questions asked, not necessarily about the report itself, but just about any particular costs that may have arisen from a delay in the money being collected for, garden waste, I believe. There was a delay on the payments by a month, and there was questions around how that happened, which I think were answered. I think we understood that there was a mess up in the system, which hadn't been identified quickly enough, and that the methods will that something will be done to ensure it doesn't happen again. But I gather there was a 1-month delay in the collection of payments. On item 10, now there was a lot of unanimity around the fact that this was needed, but a lot of questions being asked about the housing allocations, and I know that I particularly asked you that this needs to be looked into. We know that the council has been waiting for some time, further clarification its rules around first lets going to local people. Obviously the definition of local people is being much more tied up and made clearer from this, because people could apply from literally anywhere in the country to get on our housing list, which will no longer be the case. But there has been, I gather, a policy being reviewed or looked at for some time. You alluded much to the fact, and we said that I think everybody felt that we'd like this to come forward as soon as possible so we can tidy up all the loose ends around that. Because if we are providing more housing, we need to make sure it goes to the people who need it locally. On item 11, the productivity plan, we are told that there could well be some changes in the future, depending. This is something which the last government pushed for. The new government may say, well, you don't need to do this anymore. However, a plan which outlines how well you're doing by being productive is in itself a good thing. And it was felt that this perhaps should be kept in the future if possible, so long as it, in producing the plan, doesn't actually outweigh the benefits that you might find from having the plan, if that makes sense. We don't want 2 or 3 members of staff producing a plan on how they've saved money, because that doesn't save any money. And that is the end of my notes. So everyone else, although there was some good discussion and we asked a lot of good questions, I felt there was nothing that caused any sort of consternation or division that might need to be reported to you.
Thank you. Yep, I would agree with that. Okay, next one is representation from non-cabinet members. Does anybody from non-cabinet wish to speak? No? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I mean, following on from what the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee said, it's around item 7. A lot of the measures here are of concern, really. Measure 9, 10 and 11. Measure 9 is about new jobs created. That's reducing. Measure 10 is around the employment rate, which is decreasing. And measure 11 is around universal credit claimants increasing. And I just wondered what the portfolio holder was doing to address these, obviously the problems. So that was one question really I wanted to ask. And also with item 10, once again around section 106, we raised about, at the moment with Broadland, that for local connection, it's only on first let and not in perpetuity. And I just wondered what the long-term plan was, because it wasn't 100% clear where we were going to go with that. So if you can give us some clarity around that, because I think it's something we've been discussing for probably 2 years or longer. So I just wondered where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you. Which bit do you want me to answer first? Any of it? Okay. So regarding the economic situation, that was actually pulled up later on in the meeting, if you remember, that the lack of economic activity did actually relate to the changing demographics in the area, with more retirees coming in, and that has changed things. Regarding the universal credit, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what I can do regarding that. That's a national government policy to switch people over to universal credit, those who are on legacy benefits. It doesn't necessarily relate to unemployment either. Most people who are in receipt of some kind of benefit, excluding those who are retired, are actually in employment. It's because they're getting poverty wages and they're having to be topped up. So again, that's a central government decision, not something I can massively influence, but I do know the team are working very hard. They have recruited more people to deal with the increased claim in benefits, and they're handling it as well as they possibly can. Thank you. Section 106, sorry. It's not my area of expertise, so I don't have an immediate answer to that. Someone's waving at me. Richard is waving. Can you answer that one?
Thank you, Chair. When this came up in ONS, it is on our forward plan, and we will be working on this, looking to get it concluded by 2025, because it complements planning and housing needs. It's not a case of unfortunately being able to copy and paste, because there is a real need to consider it from a strategic basis. So that's definitely on the forward plan for 2025.
Thank you, Richard. I hope that answers your questions, Fran. Right, moving on to the next one. Strategic performance and risk report for Q4. So it has here that the lead officer is Helen Hall. So I'll hand over to you, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report is presenting the end-of-year performance for 2023-24, and overall the picture was a very good performance of 70% measures with a green performance status at the end of the year. I'll highlight some of the key points shown within the report. Firstly, the measures that ended the year on a red status, which were customer satisfaction and consolidated demand on housing. Customer satisfaction, to start with, due to a delay with our supplier, we were unable to launch the customer satisfaction survey on our phone lines. However, during Q4, it was actually progressed fully, tested and launched, therefore, in Q1. We did not collect any customer satisfaction data on our phone lines during Q4, and the outturn of 43.43% is for the website only, so therefore the data is incomplete for Q4. However, following the full implementation of the surveys, the Customer Experience and Insight Lead will provide survey results to service areas monthly with detailed response data to enable service improvements. Then moving on to demand on housing, we've seen far higher demand than anticipated as the impact on the economy, implementation of new government legislation and the end of private rental properties continue to filter through. This year, our temporary accommodation purchase programme is bringing properties into use by purchasing 43 units for Broadland to support the current demand in temporary accommodation. This will ensure we have the right property at the right time to ensure residents have the support they need. Following on for this, the measures that are amber with a downward direction of travel are collection of council tax and business rates. The drop in collection was expected as we implemented the Civica Revenues Benefit System in December, which resulted in 4 weeks of downtime. Therefore, court recovery work had to be suspended during this time. During the quarter, we worked with the supplier closely and the team worked extra hours to catch up with the work and commenced recovery work again. Then the next measures are obviously the economic development measures which have been discussed, number of new jobs created in the district, employment rate and those in employment claiming universal credit. And as discussed, we continue to promote our own business builder and building futures programs will encourage those that are wanting to work benefit from additional investment and employment opportunities. As we mentioned, universal credit is more likely that more residents are moving over to universal credit from other benefits, which is likely to be cause the increase rather than lower paid jobs. The amber measures that require light touch monitoring are staff turnover, firstly. Although this measure is amber, it has shown significant improvement, as during quarter the measure moved from red to amber, having been red all year. The outturn of 13.73% is a 22% reduction from the year end of 22-23, so it's been on the right track. The HR team continues to support managers with reducing their turnover using exit interview feedback and continuous coaching through the employee cycle. Food businesses, the measure missed its target but is on an upward direction of travel. There are a total of 981 food businesses in Broadland within the food hygiene rating scheme, but this is a strong year-end outturn with high standards of food safety being maintained across the Broadland area. And lastly, another one to keep light touch monitoring is fly tips removed within 1 working day. The target for this is 100%, and we achieved 93%. During quarter 4, 186 fly tips were attended to within 1 working day, and the remainder were cleared within 2 working days. Good performance, green measures to highlight here are business survival rates. The latest data is 2022, and the percentage of businesses surviving over 1 year has seen an increase on the previous 2 years. Again, this in part reflects the success of the Business Builder Support Programme and providing startups with the essential tools they require to increase their resilience. Next, another one to highlight is residents accessing support via the Help Hub. This quarter and overall this year, we have again exceeded our target. This is mainly ongoing increases in numbers accessing social prescribing and the Help Hub. It's driven by a range of factors: cost of living, increased awareness of support via media, continued household support fund, and several individual projects which target support. We're reviewing the demand that is coming into the Help Hub to fully understand the demand profile to enable us to put proactive interventions into place to help stem demand but also support people earlier before issues escalate. And lastly, the participation levels in the garden waste service. The total number of subscribers to the garden waste collection service was 35,996 at the end of the year. Participation levels have increased by over 1,800 subscribers throughout the year, even with the economic climate and cost of living pressures. And moving on to the risk register, there are no new risks in quarter 4, and no risks have had their risk scores reduced. BDC M5, which is the cyber risk, is still scoring highly at 20, although we have strong mitigating actions in place and even completed actions regarding completion of assessments, internal training, and ICT departmental upskilling. It is still reflective of the current national picture and the ongoing threat to the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And it's really good to see so many greens there, and especially around that work we're doing with housing. And I know it's classed as a red, but the work we're doing to mitigate that is really positive, and the amount of units we've bought, it's something that we should be shouting very loudly about, I think. And with the majority of the actual reds, they are all part of the wider national picture, aren't they, with cyber attacks and things like that. So it's really good that we are addressing them the way we are. Hannah, anybody else have to speak? Yes, Dan?
Thank you. I'd certainly echo your point on the housing target. I mean, this council is taking an unprecedented amount of action on that. So hopefully we'll see some positive results from that next year. Just commenting on the customer satisfaction measure, clearly it's disappointing that we've got incomplete data in that quarter. I'll take it on the chin a little bit in that when I was on the CEC committee a couple of years ago, I was insisting that we raised the target for customer satisfaction because I didn't think 60% was high enough then, and that we should push it higher. So it's on me that we're not meeting the target in quarter 3. Hopefully we'll certainly meet the target next year. What is apparent is, of course, this downturn in terms of not being able to collect data affected our sister council as much as it did us, and is a systems error. So hopefully we'll move past that. The question I've got is towards Rodney actually, and it's about the collection data, because actually given the 4 weeks of downtime with the implementation of the new system, to be 0.09% off the target is actually very strong performance, and I think is a tribute to the staff in terms of how they have took on the challenge of the new system. But my question is around that new system is of course designed to deliver savings for us, but whether we are still on course to deliver those savings despite the small blip in not reaching our target this year.
Yes, we are still on track. The major part of the savings was very much going from two separate systems, which are two separate licenses, to a single system with a single license. So that will be delivering the hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of savings that were in the original business case. And just on the collection rate, just for a point of interest, although our collection rate dropped to sort of 97.91, when I compare it to actually what Broadland did just down the road, their collection rate was 97.25. So actually, you can still see that our collection rate is quite good in comparison to some other authorities. It's not as good as it's been in previous years, and we will try and increase it, but actually, you just want to be able to compare it. Sometimes there are dips in performance.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Oh, yes, Martin.
Councillor Wymack asked about the retail streets. Was that your question?
I can ask it again if you wish me to.
Because if it was, I was just going to comment on it. But the fall is very small, and we're way better than the national average. Some areas are 13% empty properties on high streets.
That wasn't the question.
It wasn't. I misheard it. Sorry.
I'll ask it again if you wish me to, Chair.
Yeah.
Well, obviously not for the cabinet.
It was a misunderstanding. There's no point to repeat it. Thank you. We're all done. Questions here? Okay, thank you. Move on to the next one. Oh, sorry, yes. Right, so the recommendation is to endorse the Q4 2023-24 performance detailed in Appendix 1 and to endorse the current position with respect to the risks and agree the actions to support risk mitigation detailed in Appendix 2. Are we all in agreement?
And that's, yeah, carried, Chair.
Thank you. I got a bit ahead of myself there, didn't I? Right. So next item is the finance report for Q4. I'm assuming that's going to be... Oh, Darren, okay.
Thank you, Chair. This report just gives an overview of the Council's position at Q4, which was the end of financial year 23-24. I'm just going to highlight a few key points on the report. At the end of the year, various inflationary and demand pressures led to an overall £63,000 deficit on the overall costs of core services for the Council, which is against a budget of £13.5 million. This was offset at the end of year total position by higher investment income, which was 1.93 million, which was against the original budget of 1.1 million. This is due to the fact that the council had higher cash balances and higher interest rates were available on the interest markets for us to invest in for fixed rate products and also for money market liquid funds as well. The net result of that was that we were able to transfer £451,000 to the general fund at the end of the year. For the capital programme, at the end of the year, BDC had spent 14.5 million against a total budget of 21.8 million. The appendix to the report details the variances that are summarised in the report for each of the service delivery areas, and there's also a recommendation and details included for 4 revenue budget carry forward requests and a list of several items for capital budget carry forward requests which will be applied in this year's 24-25 budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is now. I do know Steve wants to speak about this, and we both do actually, so I'll hand straight over to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, challenging time last year in relation to, well, last 2 years, particularly last year in relation to inflationary pressures within the council, and whatever the headline figure is in terms of inflation, whether it's 4, 10 or 11%, it's actually the inflationary figures to the council which count, and they may not correspond. So when you see inflation at 4% or 2%, we may have inflationary pressures upon us from suppliers or bodies or whatever's going on, which are actually higher than that. And as you know, at the moment, what the inflation figure is, but food inflation is higher than that. So that's the issues that we have. So whenever you see a general inflationary figure, it does not mean that that's exactly what we're under in terms of pressure. So it's been a difficult time period. However, as you know, when we set the council's budget, there was considerable work went into efficiencies and savings to bring down that deficit. And as Darren said, deficit's down to 63,000. That was largely covered by the extra investment income. And there is a cautionary note to make on this, that in terms of the investment income, as more capital is spent and on capital commitments, particularly the large capital commitments that was made from the previous administration and demands upon us, as that gets spent on capital, then there's less money to invest on income, therefore your income on investments reduces, and therefore these high figures on investment income that we're now seeing, 1.9, will reduce just as a result of that, never mind interest rates having an effect on investment income and what we receive, which will reduce as well. So I think there's a clear picture emerged here that we do need to continue our good work on savings within the council and focus in on that. Plus we still need to do work on the long-term capital pressures that this council faces. In terms of the recommendation to note to endorse the revenue and capital position for the year end, there's also a recommendation to approve the revenue capital slippage as well for 24-25, which of course I would propose that we do. There's also another amendment we'd like to make, and that amendment is from myself and also in consultation with Natasha from Community and Housing. Over the last month or so, officers have been in discussion with particularly Natasha in terms of the pressures out there in the community in relation to cost of living, which has increased, as you know, and what's going on out there in the economy at the moment. And therefore we're going to propose a minor amount of money to be set aside from the 451, which we do propose does go through to the General Reserve, but a minor amount of money to help alleviate a bit of those pressures within the Community and Housing team. I'll just run through those. There's three areas actually, and they total of the total is £30,000. We're proposing that we set aside £10,000. This is actually to help with the previous fund, whatever it takes fund. This was actually related to the government under COVID pressures with household spending, etc. The housing team are experiencing significant requests and pressures in relation to people's budgets still, and this fund, it's believed by the housing team, it could set aside 10,000. It would help them when they've got applications coming in for support to help people to keep them in their own homes and off the housing registrar and out of temporary accommodation. And as such, that would be good money spent, and also, of course, take a lot of pressure off of people. Never mind the moral implication, the moral imperative there as well. And in terms of the investment income off the money market, I think residents will also agree that's a good way to spend a bit of it. back within the community. There's also the council tax discretionary relief fund, and we're recommending £5,000 there. This fund is to help customers who are in financial difficulty and need additional help top up their council tax assistance award. The amount available in 24-25 is 15,000, and we've already allocated approximately 20% of this in this year's budget so far. However, the budget is managed so we ensure we have available funds throughout the year to enable us to ensure we do not spend the fund too quickly. We are currently refusing 60% of applicants. This is from the housings team to us. In past years, we have had additional funds from COVID support money and from council tax funds. CTSF funding added an additional 50,000 to that pot. This money is not available this year. However, levels of applications have remained the same as previously, which means that we will not be able to keep awards within the normal annual budget of 15,000 without strictly limiting the amount we can help people by. So the additional 5,000, bearing in mind what we've spent already in terms of need, would help to at least try to maintain the previous help that we gave last year that also meets the demand that we are really facing in reality. And the last one is discretionary housing payment. We're recommending 15,000 there. DHAP, discretionary payment that can be used for housing costs when these are not being met by the applicant's housing benefit or universal credit, is to alleviate short-term financial need whilst the customer makes changes to their personal or housing circumstances to make their housing costs more affordable. Demand for this remains high due to increased cost of living and due to welfare reform such as bedroom tax, HA shortfalls. The amount available 24-25 is 82,733, and we have already allocated 21,469, which is a quarter of the budget already so far this year. However, this budget is managed to ensure we do not overspend for the end of the year. Current demand for this fund, however, means that to ensure we stay on budget, we're having to turn down more applicants than we would like to. DHP funding for that financial year 24-25 is 44% less than the peak in 2021, although the demand has remained the same. For the years 21-22 and 22-23, extra COVID support money was allocated by the council for DHP to cover the extra demand, allowing us to spend over budget. However, in the past year and this year, there is no additional funding. Therefore, we are currently having to be more restrictive on these awards than we would like, which has meant we would not be able to help as many customers. So I think, Cabinet, you can see that there's an issue out there, and this is a temporary additional funding that we'd be putting into those three pots to help the housing situation within our officers and what they're coping with residents. It's a temporary one-off out of the additional investment income, and therefore we would hope that by next year the economy and people's living standards, things would have settled down and be in a better place, and therefore such demand would be lowered in the future. So it's a temporary assistance to the three pots of money in the three areas that we're talking about. I think Natasha and myself would jointly propose that we do indeed allocate from the 451 going to general reserves this pot of money. If for some reason all of this isn't spent, the demands drop off in between now and the end of the financial year, then the officer team would return any sums of money still left over from this back to general reserves. I think that's quite an important point to make, actually. So if demand did drop off all of a sudden, they would return some of it back. However, if it doesn't, then they can spend the whole of these amounts we're putting in, which is anticipated, and I suspect that's going to be the case, actually. So with those caveats, we'd recommend that amendment.
Thank you.
Natasha.
Right.
So we haven't had sight of this, so I just want to clarify that we've got this right for the minutes, because it's a bit, there was a lot of words there, Steve, but I just want to make sure that we've got the essence of it right for the minutes. So from the money that was set aside for the reserves initially, £30,000 of that you want to move. So let me get the figures right. £10,000 to the Whatever It Takes fund, £5,000 to the council tax discretionary rate fund, and £15,000 to the discretionary housing payment fund, subject to those being spent. If they aren't spent within the next financial year, they will go back into reserves. Is that correct? Within the current, within 24-25, they'll go back into the reserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, I fully endorse that. I think it's a responsible thing to do to respond to our community's needs. I'd like to thank the team over there for bringing it to our attention, putting in the work to show exactly where the money needs to go rather than just writing a blank cheque. And I'm sure the rest of you will agree with that. Any other comments from Cabinet? Jan?
Yeah, I just endorse that. I think it's only right that, as Steve pointed out, we have this a surplus from investment income, and I think it's a very good use of that funding. And given that it's very clearly laid out how it's going to be spent, and that any surplus will come back into general reserves, it seems a very acceptable thing to do. So I certainly support it.
Thank you. Yes, and it's very much in line with our early intervention work as well. So what the money we're putting in now will save us money further down the line and cause a lot less stress to families in the community. So I'm sure we'll all agree it. Okay, so I'll move on to the recommendation, which says to note the Treasury activity for the second half of the year and that it complies with the agreed strategy, and note the 23-24 prudential indicators for the latter 6 months of the year. We all agree.
And recommendation 3.
Oh, sorry. I don't have it written down here. Sorry? Yeah, I don't have it written down here, sorry.
Recommendation are 1, to enforce revenue and capital position for year end. 2, to approve the revenue and capital subscription request for use in 24-25, plus also our amendment. I don't know if Emma just wants to read out those 3 again. Just make sure that we agree with them.
Yeah, can do. So from money that was set aside for the General Reserve Fund to General Reserve to set aside £30,000 of that underspend, £10,000 to the Whatever It Takes Fund, £5,000 to the Council Tax Discretionary Rate Fund, and £15,000 to the discretionary housing payment as a temporary one-off to be used in 24-25, and if this isn't all used, to go back into the general fund.
Right, so is that all approved?
No, we haven't voted on it yet.
Sorry, I'll put hands up to approve it, sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's agreed. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Sorry, I'm losing my place on here. My eyesight is shocking. Okay. Number 9, the annual Treasury Review Report. That is on page 83, and we're going to hand over to Rodney for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a requirement that we bring back to yourselves, a report at the end of the year on the Treasury Management performance. So pleased to report there have been no breaches in any of the indicators you set, any of the prudential indicators, and there's only 2 key things I'd like to point to your attention. First of all, I think it's worth noting that at the end of March 2024, we had £42.6 million invested on behalf of the Council. And as has already been mentioned in the previous report, the return on those investments was 1.9 million, which was £800,000 over the budget. But other than that, nothing further to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Any other comments from anybody? Steve?
And just in terms of the annual Treasury review, clearly there's the other part of the report. but we must make sure that our investment income is being invested in the correct way, as all local authorities under government edict, so to speak, are required to prioritise security over liquidity, and this council maintains that position. We have maintained security over liquidity. So as an example, we do not invest in fine wines and speculate in that way. All money is under the A rating system and is secured accordingly. I'll just emphasise again on the investment income, 2.1 in the report. The Council's capital programme has increased over the last 4 years from 2.4 million as at 31st of March 21 to 15 million as at 31st of March 24. So in a pretty short period of time, with a lot of money allocated. In the last year, under this administration, is actually, of course, is a small proportion of that 15 million, mainly to do with LHF, and the spending on LHF has an effect on our revenue account because of temporary accommodation, spending on be it bread and breakfast, which of course is very expensive. You know, under the previous administration, there was commitment as well to that. So part of the capital spend in the last year committed to by ourselves, additional to the previous committed to, will have a beneficial effect in terms of revenue to the council. And that's about it really. Commend the report to the council, to the cabinet, I mean.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Nope. Okay, move straight to the recommendation then. Shall I read properly now? I can vaguely see. So, to note the Treasury activity for the second half of the year and that it complies with the agreed strategy. Note the 23-24 prudential indicators for the latter 6 months of the year. Are we all in agreement? We are. Thank you. Okay, so the next one is the housing allocations policy. Now, I do have an additional recommendation, so I'll read that before Richard comes to present. So, this is to endorse the proposed amendment to the removal of the family connection detailed in table 4.1, page 58, as outlined below. An applicant aged 55 or over with a family connection to Broadland District Council who has an ongoing need for care, and it is necessary to move to Broadland to enable the family member to meet this care need. So, there's a further clarity to be added within the policy following 6.43 as outlined below. An applicant will have a family connection where they have a close family member who has resided in the district continuously for at least 5 years. The family member must be responsible for the unpaid care of the applicant who needs help because of frailty, illness, or a disability, and they cannot cope without this support. Consideration will be given to the extent and frequency of the care required, the distance the applicant lives from the family member, and what other provision of care is available to the applicant in their current locality. Evidence may be requested to verify the relationship between the applicant and the family member. The care needs of the applicant and the length of time the family member has been resident in the district. So this came up at ONS. I put forward an amendment following feedback from our public consultation, and this is how it's worded in the policy now, but I'll hand over to Richard to give it more justice than I can. Thank you.
That's all. Thank you, Chair. So I was just going to, so that's a specific change to a recommendation which would fall nicely within section 4.1, where it says about the family connection. But as to give a more rounded review, housing allocations policy, as you know, is a way in which people gain access to our social housing. Throughout this process and to get to this point, we completed a significant amount of member engagement, which I just want to thank all members involved for giving up their time. We had 3 BDC-specific engagement sessions, and within those sessions we were able to assess any suggested changes. So if a change was made, we were able to look at the data, go away, see what the impact would be, and to see whether it's something that we actually want to move forward on. Therefore, we are really confident in the recommendations that we are making within this report, because we really think it will reflect the need of our residents and it will best meet how those residents gained access to social housing. Consultation was also undertaken, received really positive feedback, 91% positive for one of those, which I was very proud of. 70% was our lowest, and that was regarding the family connection, which is why the suggested change is very much welcome. So officers are therefore very confident with suggested changes found on page 96 in section 4.1, and are therefore asking Cabinet to recommend to Council to propose changes to the allocations policy detailed within the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. So, yeah, as Richard said, there was a lot of work that went into this. 3 sessions of workshops, which is open to anyone who sits on the policy development panel. And as I've said before, the recommendations all came about very organically. It wasn't Richard telling everyone how he thought it should be. So I'm really pleased actually with the final product, and the public consultation had such positive feedback, apart from that one point which we have now amended. And it is a really difficult balancing act to support the community in a way that meets those who are most in need without overwhelming the system. We'd love to give everybody a social house, obviously, but we're just not in a position to do that, and that is part, again, the wider national picture. So we have done the best we can, and I'm very pleased with the final result. So any comments from anybody or questions? Steve?
Yeah, just to reiterate really the amount of attention that's gone into this, because it was a matter that needed attention, and sometimes I know that in authorities perhaps this sort of matter doesn't get the exact attention it needs, but that's happened here, and I'm really, really pleased to see that. And the additional recommendation here is well worth supporting. I was really pleased to see it actually, Natasha. So yes, really, really happy to support this.
Steve, let's go. Any other comments? Jan?
Well, just to say again, it is quite a balancing act, isn't it? But I think we have the clarity, within this document, and the evidence to support the guidance here. So I absolutely recognise the work that's been put into it, and thank the officers for that, and certainly want to support this going forward.
Thank you, and also thank you for mentioning the word evidence, because you reminded me of how we used independent modelling as well, didn't we, to assess the impact. It wasn't just, this is a crazy idea, let's go with this. We assessed the impact it would have with an independent company whose name I've completely forgotten. Richard? That's the one. See, I get it mixed up as well. So we did that modelling to make sure it wasn't going to disenfranchise people, and to see if it was worth putting something forward. So it was very much evidence-based and data-led, as well as using that human heart as well. Thank you. So we'll go straight to the recommendation. Oh, hang on.
So there's a recommendation, it's the same one there, but as amended.
Okay, right. So to recommend to Council the adoption of the housing allocations policy as amended, and that is the amendment that I read out at the start of the presentation. Are we all in favour of that?
And it's carried.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. So number 11. Let's see. Oh, here we are, sorry. Right, number 11, the productivity plan. That is straight over to you then, Sinead. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just to give you a bit of background to this report, so government requested that all local authorities to produce a productivity plan. And this was announced as part of the recent local government finance settlement, and we were given a deadline of the 19th of July to submit this plan to government. Obviously, with the new government in place following the general election, we are still awaiting a steer from government on next steps, but we are taking the assumption this will continue, so therefore we continue to progress this plan. You'll see that the previous government requested that the plan covers 4 key themes, and I've outlined that in section 2.2 of the report, and that this plan is published on our website. The government stated the plan will be used to consider any emerging themes across the sector, any implications for future national policy design, and the role in government in supporting local government in the future. Appendix 1 therefore sets out the proposed plan for Broadland, and this mirrors our current policy framework, so that being our council plan and the delivery plan that council approved in February this year. So you'll see it's a summation of the work that we've done to date, and in line with government's request, and outlines our next steps in terms of transformation and productivity. So just in terms of recommendations, that is seeking for Cabinet's approval to the draft plan and delegation to the Chief of Staff in consultation with the leader to finalise and submit the plan to government. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all notice the irony of government requesting opposite time to show just how productive they are. But I remember you saying actually that you did find it quite a useful exercise. So swings and roundabouts, I guess. Any comments from anybody? Yes, Dan?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I endorse this plan. I mean, it shows, again, what we knew already, and that basically driving efficiency is business as usual for Broadland District Council. So, you know, it's good to see it on paper, even though it takes time to do that. But in terms of how the government is going to treat these, what I think is important in this plan is that there are some Broadland-specific asks at the end, which I think apply to any government of any political colour, which might be an office where the government can give us some real help going forwards to help us to unblock some important issues. So I'm happy to endorse the plan.
Thank you. Jan?
Yeah, and on that theme, I think it's for any government, it's good to make the points that we have done here in terms of recognising the role of district councils, in particular the services, but that longer term and stable government funding that we need to be able to plan adequately in the longer term, and getting away from this short term sort of scrabble for short term grant funding, which is not the most efficient use of staff time, so in terms of productivity, and that actually, you know, that message going forward to any government, and the new government included, is a good message to push.
Thank you. I was pleased to see comments coming from the government actually about long-term funding. So hopefully that will be coming our way soon. Did I see your hand raised up, Trevor?
Chair, thank you. Just events, dear boy, events have taken over and the department clearly doesn't exist anymore. And so we might want to just amend the recommendation to go to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government is now back in vogue.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, I'm pleased to see that one. Right, so we'll go straight to the recommendation, if I can actually speak. Okay, so that is to approve the draft productivity plan for Broadland District Council to delegate authority to the Chief of Staff in consultation with the leader to finalise and submit the productivity plan to the as are now amended, yes, the newly named department. What are they calling it again? Housing, Communities and Local Government, yes. Are we all in favour of that? Yes. Thank you. Right, move on to Public Sector Equality Duty Annual Update and Equality Objectives. And that is Sinead again.
Thank you, Chair. So this report, there are 2 key purposes. So the first is to outline the progress made by the Council during 23-24 in complying with the Public Sector Equalities Duty, and this is required of us by the Equalities Act 2010, and the second is to update the Equalities Objectives for the Council. So just in terms of a bit of background to this report, so required by the Equalities Act 2010 to publish an annual report, essentially outlining how we've complied with the duties for public bodies, and this is called the Public Sector Equalities Duty, and I've provided an outline of what that is in section 2.1. So Appendix 1 provides the annual report, and this outlines the activities and work we've undertaken to meet the requirement. You'll see much of this work is generally embedded in the way we run our services and the way the organisation operates. As a public body, we're also bound by what's termed specific duties in the Equalities Act, and this means we have to publish one or more equality objectives every 4 years, and we're now due to update those. So you'll see in Appendix 2 the proposed objectives for the period 24 to 28, and these objectives now reflect the new vision and aims set out in the council plan and the delivery plan, and they also now include lead officers and delivery timescales, and this is really to ensure we have greater oversight in terms of delivery and accountability of those objectives. So in terms of the recommendations, we're seeking Cabinet's approval to the objectives and to note the annual report, which after this meeting, if approved, will be published on our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments, questions?
Just an ask, really. Natasha, excuse me. The staff, do the staff receive so many hours when they're first employed, or every 4 years? Certainly once in the employment set, on equality training, what our policies on equality, so every staff member would.
Yes, so both members and staff have mandatory training on equalities, diversity and inclusion. We also run regular events on equalities for staff and for members, and we're also trying to raise awareness of the Intran service as well that we provide, which is for translation and interpretation services. So there's also training that's provided by Intran on that as well. Dan.
Thank you. Happy to endorse the report in its entirety. I think the one comment I would make is in terms of the section about the promotion of equalities events, where we provide some examples. It might be more helpful in future years if we provide a fuller list, because we're perhaps selling ourselves a little bit short on that, and I think it's something which did draw some comment at ONS about which events we'd selected. I think if we provide a fuller list, we can show that we're not favouring particular events over others, and it will give a better flavour of what we're doing as a council. Just a comment for the future.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It did bring up some discussion around which particular causes and groups were selected over others, so I would endorse that comment as well. Okay, so we'll go straight to the recommendation then, which is to note the Public Sector Equality Duty Annual Report as attached at Appendix A. Are we all in agreement? And to approve equality objectives for 2024 to 28 as attached at Appendix B. Now, are we all in agreement? Yes, we are.
And that's carried.
Thank you. Okay, and then finally, the forward plan. Any comments on the forward plan? No, I'd like to make something up to be a bit entertaining, but I don't have the imagination right now. So it'll just be noted then. Right, that's it then. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.